So hello, everyone. My name is Erica Coghill, and I'm with Stilly Valley Health Connections. Thank you so much for joining us for this session on making your own baby food. For everyone who's joining us live today, please note that this class is set up in a Zoom webinar format. This means that all participants are muted and your videos are turned off so we can record the presentation. If you would like to leave any questions or comments, we encourage you to do so by using the chat or Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Now I will pass it over to Anka Solowski. Hopefully I did that right.
Yep.
A dietitian with Sound Dietitians who will be presenting the topic. Thank you for being here, and thank you all to everyone who's joined so far. We hope that you enjoy the program. So I'm turning it over to you, Anka. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for the intro, Erica. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. I want to give a shout out to Stilly Valley Health Connections. Thank you for hosting this class. And today we're talking about making your own baby food. So we're going to talk a little bit about feeding progressions and what are some age-appropriate options. We're going to talk about some specific nutrition facts, what nutrients are needed for the health and development of babies, and then we're going to talk about some specific foods and how you can cook them so that they are basically easy to feed to your baby and safe. So let's start with talking about when should we actually start feeding solids to kiddos. So definitely always check with your pediatrician and get the okay from them before starting any solids. But basically what they're looking for is that the baby is able to sit upright, unsupported. They can hold their head upright and steady so they're not all wobbly, and showing an interest in wanting to eat. So the interest in wanting to eat really we see when kiddos are brought to the table or you're eating around them and they're either like grabbing towards the food or licking their lips or, you know, making like cooing noises or looking at you with interest. That's kind of how you can tell that they actually are interested in what you're eating. And before I go forward, I do want to mention there is a lot of material to cover. So if you have questions, just leave them in the chat and we will, I will answer any questions at the end of the presentation. Okay. So in terms of the feeding progression, so this is periods of months of age, right? So 4 to 6 months of age, breast milk and formula are still the primary source of nutrients. So this is really a time to explore and learn and try things. So don't worry about low intake of solids. They're not going to be providing that much nutrition. It's really just getting the motor skills and the oral skills going. And later on, solid food becomes more important with providing nutrients. So at this point, you can consider offering 1 meal per day. Again, their hydration needs are being met from breast milk and formula. So only really a small amount of fluids should be introduced. If you even want to do that at this point, you could also wait until later. And then introducing allergens early on. So I have a couple of slides specifically talking about allergens, so we will talk about those in a couple of slides. Now, when we get to 7 to 8 months, you can consider increasing the amount of solids offered each day. At this point, those oral skills and fine motor skills become stronger with kiddos. So they're able to eat a lot more solids. You want to offer a variety of different foods just to make sure that they're getting different types of nutrients, but also being offered different tastes so that their taste buds and palate becomes accustomed to different types of foods. We know that with kiddos that get a variety of different foods early on in life, there's less chances of them becoming picky eaters, which I see a lot in practice. And there's things that we can do, but really starting early on can really prevent that from happening. At this point, you can also consider adding some delicate and soft foods that are cut up to avoid choking hazards. So even if kiddos don't have teeth, they can still chew on things with their gums. So a good example would be like a soft mango, cutting it into a strip and just letting the kiddo hold it and kind of chew on it, suck on it, just to get that experience and those skills kind of start developing. And encouraging drinking from an open cup with assistance. So there's a lot of new research and new recommendations out talking about how sippy cups are not the best because they can interfere with the way that the mouth is formed, like the palate, and the way that teeth come in. So a lot of even dentists will tell you to avoid sippy cups as much as possible, just teaching kids to drink with an open cup with assistance from the get-go. Okay, 9 to 12 months. So babies who are primarily spoon-fed at this point should be given the opportunity to try finger foods. They're showing a lot more practice with motor skills. They can pick things up, so it's a lot easier, but we want to make sure that those skills continue to develop as they age. Again, being really cautious around foods that are choking hazards, cutting things up into small sizes as appropriate. At this point, 9 to 12 months, we're seeing that solid foods are becoming a major source of nutrients. And you can offer 3 meals per day at this age with breast milk and formula given either at meals as like the beverage or breastfeeding or giving formula on demand as your kiddo asks for it. So after 12 months of age, the baby should be eating like the rest of the family. Like they should be up by the table in their high chair, and they should be able to eat with their utensils, and foods, again, like cutting things up for them, but really there shouldn't be any real modification to the food at this point, 12 plus months. And at this point, because formula and breast milk isn't necessarily a source of nutrients, you can start offering 3 meals and snacks per day. Again, it's your choice in terms of breastfeeding. Breastfeeding can go on for years. So it's a personal choice if you want to just switch directly to solids or continue breastfeeding and offering solids as well. Okay, so now we're going to talk about specific nutrients that are needed for growth and development. And so the way that I have these slides set up is I'll tell you a little bit about some of the roles that these nutrients have in the body and then some sources of these nutrients. I do want to mention, so all of the nutrients that we're talking about in these next couple of slides, they are all present in infant formula. Probably the exception would be fiber. There's not a lot of fiber in infant formula. And then a lot of them are present in breast milk as well. But I don't list those under all of the sources. So just know that we're talking more about solid foods in these next couple of slides. So carbohydrates are really important for growth and development. They supply the babies with energy. They're used to build new tissues. They're really the main source of energy for the brain and the nervous system, right? It's the easiest way to get energy in our body, even as adults. And babies prefer it. So you'll see it in human milk and infant formula as lactose, but you also find it in a variety of other plant foods like cereals, grains, fruits, vegetables, legumes. Fiber is really important for digestion. It slows down the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream, so it helps with blood sugar management, keeping that blood sugar steady. And it provides food for the gut microbiome. So our microbes that live in our gut, they feed primarily on fiber. And we are pretty early in the research regarding the gut microbiome, but we have quite a few studies suggesting that depending on what microbes live in our gut, we are more prone to certain diseases like diabetes and Alzheimer's and dementia, Parkinson's, those types of things. So feeding the gut microbiome really early on can help reduce the risks of those diseases in the future. And really, fiber you find in any type of plant food. So your fruits, vegetables, grains, beans, legumes, and making sure that you offer a variety of those foods. Similar to humans, different microbes like to eat different types of fiber and different types of food. So you want to make sure that you offer a variety of different plant foods to make sure that all of the beneficial bacteria in your gut are eating what they like to eat and thrive. Okay, protein. So protein is really important for building, maintaining, and repairing new tissue. It's also kind of the building block for enzymes, hormones, and antibodies. So really important for just like the development of the body and also the immune system. It can also be used as a source of energy if carbohydrates are not given in a large amount. It's kind of like a backup energy source. So really, you'll find it in a lot of meats, seafood, dairy products, nuts, seeds, beans, legumes, quite a lot of things. And you'll see with a lot of these nutrients, there's a lot of overlap with a lot of the foods. So fats are a source of energy for kiddos. And it also provides padding for vital organs and insulation, right? Keeps babies warm. Fats are also required for normal development of a lot of different organs like the brain and eyes, skin, hair, the immune system even. And it's also required for absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. So vitamin A, D, E, and K. We'll talk about these in the next couple of slides. Really, there needs to be a fat source in order for those vitamins to be absorbed. So fats you get in a variety of animal products, also avocados, nuts, seeds, oils. Egg yolks are really high in healthy fats as well. All right, so now we're going to talk more about vitamins, and then we'll move on to minerals as well. So B vitamins, they play important roles in metabolism and energy production. Different B vitamins are used at different steps in metabolism. So it's important to get a variety of them throughout the day and week as well. B vitamins are also used for building cells and tissues, and especially for the nervous system development. So whether it's the central nervous system or peripheral, so our nerves that we have in our arms and legs and the rest of our body. B vitamins, again, a lot of different animal products, whole grains, green leafy vegetables, and dairy products as well, you will find them. Vitamin C, so vitamin C is really important for forming collagen. Collagen is kind of what provides structure for tissues, especially for skin. It's important for healing wounds, so collagen is also the one that helps to heal wounds and get that tissue back to normal. It helps the immune system stay strong. So in turn, your immune system can help resist infections and bacteria and viral products as well. It is also really important for the absorption of iron, and we'll talk a little bit more about this once we talk about iron. But vitamin C you can find in a variety of products. Strawberries are a really good source, bell peppers, citrus fruit. This one is like a pretty common knowledge. You get vitamin C from oranges, right? Potatoes are actually really high in vitamin C. Tomatoes, broccoli, cantaloupe. So vitamin A. Vitamin A is really important for maintaining healthy skin, hair, and mucous membranes. It also has a really important role in eye and bone development, and it plays a role in the immune system and the development of healthy reproductive systems as well. So a lot of your Foods that are orange in color are going to have vitamin A, like sweet potatoes and carrots, and things like cantaloupe, but also green leafy vegetables like broccoli and cabbage and lettuce have some vitamin A. You can also find it in fish oil. Liver is actually really high in vitamin A. Some parents will just like sneak like a little bit of pureed liver into foods where they can, like if you're making like a pureed meat. You can slip some in and get some vitamin A and iron and some other nutrients. And eggs are also high in vitamin A, especially eggs that come from pasture-raised chickens, because they're able to eat green things outside, that also have vitamin A. So the vitamin A kind of gets transferred to the eggs as well. So vitamin G. Vitamin G is, as we know, is really important for developing the immune system. It's also important for bone development and growth. It also has some roles in muscle function and building that muscle strength, right? We want our kiddos to become big and strong. So there are not a whole lot of food sources that are high in vitamin D. You can find vitamin D in some fatty fish like salmon, again, that liver, egg yolks, and then fortified dairy products. But really, we recommend for breastfed or partially breastfed babies that vitamin D is supplemented. So you can get the drops, just put them in the bottle or directly onto the tongue. That's fine. The recommendation for infants is 400 IUs per day. For infant formula, though, it does have added vitamin D. So if you are feeding infant formula, you do not need to worry about supplementing with vitamin D. So vitamin E is a really important vitamin to offer protection against oxidation. So oxidation is a process that happens to our bodies when we are just exposed to things in our environment, whether it's, pollution or different chemicals. It's just a process that happens, and vitamin E kind of helps minimize the damage from oxidation. And it helps prevent the breakdown of tissues. You'll see it in a lot of like skincare products. It'll also help with keeping the skin healthy, same with like nails, hair, those types of things. So eggs are high in vitamin E. You'll also find vitamin E in meat, whole grain cereals, and fish. So vitamin K is really important for bone formation and blood clotting. So when we're talking about this vitamin K, we're talking about food sources. For those of you that have kiddos, you will probably remember that when they're born, they're given usually a vitamin K shot. And that's because babies are not able to make their own vitamin K like adults, so they need that extra boost at the beginning. But then as they start eating solids, they're able to get some vitamin K from food as well, and we also produce it. So vitamin K, you'll see it in a lot of dark leafy greens, Brussels sprouts, lettuce. There's also some other fruits and vegetables that are lower in vitamin K, like kiwis and grapes. But these are like the main sources of vitamin K. Okay, now we're talking more about minerals. So iron. Iron is really important for just the proper formation of red blood cells. Red blood cells are the ones that transport oxygen throughout the body, and we need oxygen in order to grow and repair and maintain new tissues. And making sure that you're offering iron-rich foods to prevent iron deficiency anemia. So when we're talking about iron, there's actually two sources of iron. Heme iron, it comes from animal products, and it is better absorbed by our gut. Non-heme iron comes from plant foods, and it is not as well absorbed. So you'll find it in things like legumes, dark leafy greens, fortified grain products. For non-heme iron products, we want to eat these with a vitamin C source because it helps with that absorption. So you're getting more of that iron if you are eating it with a vitamin C source. So it can be something as simple as, having, for example, some beans and doing like a squeeze of lemon or lime juice on top and mixing it in, right? Or having some strawberries on the side to help absorb that iron. Zinc. Zinc is really important for just DNA formation. It helps to make parts of genetic material. It also helps make parts of the red blood cells. So it has a role in that transport of oxygen throughout the body. It's also really important for metabolism, immune functions, and digestive functions. So you'll see a lot of like cold medicine has some zinc added to it because it helps with that immune system. You'll find it in a lot of meat, seafood. So things like oysters are really high in zinc, but also legumes and whole grains as well. Hey, calcium. So calcium, really important for bone and tooth development. It also plays some role in blood clotting and hormone secretion, and just the way our muscles and nerves function. We need calcium in order for them to function properly. Dairy products are really good source of calcium, but you can also find it in plant products like broccoli, legumes, dark leafy greens, canned fish. So the canned fish is the one that specifically has the bones left in. That's going to be higher in calcium. And then tofu, just checking on the label to see if it was fortified with calcium. Sodium. So sodium that we typically get from salt helps with acid-base balance and muscle contraction and nerve transmission. So it's really important to get enough sodium. There is sodium in human milk and infant formula. We actually don't recommend adding salt to food for infants younger than 12 months. And the reason for that is our kidneys are what process sodium. And with infants, their kidneys are really, really tiny, and they cannot process a whole lot of salt. So it's best to just avoid adding any added salt and just know that there are quite a few different foods like celery and fruits and vegetables that have sodium already. So they are likely getting their sodium needs met. Okay, and omega-3s. So omega-3s are really important for brain and eye development, but also for the immune system and cardiovascular system. We know omega-3s are just great overall. There are actually 3 types of omega-3s. I'm not going to try to pronounce these really long names. Typically, we just refer to them as EPA, DHA, and ALA. So EPA and DHA are mostly found in animal products, and then ALA is found mostly in plant products. So your food sources are going to be fatty fish. So you'll see those listed. Some seafood like oysters and shrimp. Grass-fed beef also has some omega-3s. And then your plant foods are typically going to be flax seeds, walnuts, chia seeds, and typically infant rice cereal and oatmeal are fortified with omega-3s. A lot of people think that avocado oil has omega-3s, and it's not really a good source of omega-3s. So really focusing on these other foods would be a better choice. Okay, so let's talk about benefits of making your own baby food. Really, it's, you can control the ingredients. It can help cut down on the cost of the baby food. When you're buying like pre-made purees, you're not only paying for the food, you're paying for the jar and you're paying for the processing of that food. So really just like buying ingredients from scratch can really cut down on that cost. You can also tailor the food to meet your family's cultural and dietary preferences very easily. And you don't need to do anything special. You can just puree foods that you're already cooking for the rest of the family. And in terms of just making your own, you have more choices of foods and flavors. Like you're not going to find, a jarred dragon fruit puree, for example. Or even like mango is really hard to find because they don't keep well. So you can expose your baby to a lot more foods than you would if you were just giving them store-bought purees. Hey, so getting started with making your own baby food. It doesn't need to be fancy. You don't need any fancy equipment, really. It can be as simple as mashing something like a ripe avocado or a banana with a fork. So when you are starting to introduce solids to your baby, again, once you get the okay from your pediatrician, start with one ingredient at a time. And this is so that you can monitor and see if there's any allergies to food, right? And now the recommendations are to introduce allergens as soon as possible. So sometimes that can be as early as 4 months of age. And making sure that you're using foods that are in season, because you're going to get more nutrients if that food is in season. For example, you're going to get a lot more vitamin A from a tomato that is grown, in the summer on local land than if you're getting a tomato that was grown in a greenhouse in January, right? And also use foods that you're preparing for the rest of your family to save costs and also cut down on time too. But make sure that you're not adding any added sugar, salt, or seasonings, just to make sure that the baby can tolerate those things. So let's talk about allergens. So we know that about 1 in 13 children have a food allergy. And of those kids, about 40% will be allergic to more than one food. So not only is it important to identify those foods early on by introducing some of these common allergen foods and giving them regularly if there is no reaction, it can actually prevent an allergy from forming later on in life. So your common food allergens are going to be cow's milk, egg, fish, shellfish, wheat, peanut, sesame. Sesame is a new one that was added because it's more common now. Soy and tree nuts, right? So when you are introducing allergens, you want to start with a small amount of one allergen food, so about 1/8 of a teaspoon. If you don't notice a reaction, you can slowly increase the amount. So it's important to also introduce allergens in the morning because it can take up to 2 hours for a reaction to happen. So you want to make sure that if something does happen, you're able to call a pediatrician or a doctor or somebody to get some help, right? Give one allergen food at a time so that there's no confusion as to what food actually caused that reaction. And if there's no reaction, you can increase exposure 2-3 times a week to prevent that allergy from developing. So an example of a lot of parents will ask me, well, how do I introduce like nuts because they're a choking hazard? So you can add a little bit of like peanut butter or almond butter to a small amount of puree that the baby already tolerates and is not allergic to, and really watch for a reaction that way. So in terms of preparing baby food, we want to make sure that we're preparing in not necessarily a sterile environment, but a clean environment, right? As clean as we can get it so that we're not accidentally introducing any bacteria to that food. So make sure that you wash your hands, kitchen surfaces, and any equipment before using anything. For any fruits and vegetables that are being used, make sure to scrub them really well, peel and remove the seeds. Wash them with cold water. There's no need to use any special like rinses or anything like that. Just rinsing really well under cold water should do the trick. For any meat, removing bones and skins, connective tissue, all of the stuff that would make pureeing or mashing things really hard, you want to remove that. And really, you can cook food whatever way you want. You can steam it, roast it, bake it, boiling it. Not sure if grilling would really work because it can modify the texture so that it makes it harder to puree, but really like you can just do whatever you're already doing for the rest of your family. And in terms of pureeing the food, you can use a food processor, a blender, or even just like a fork or a spoon, or a baby grinder. Again, if you want to buy the fancy equipment, or if you already have a food processor and blender, it makes things a lot easier. But if you just want to use a fork or a spoon, that also works, right? We do want to make sure that there's some testing of the smoothness by rubbing the puree in between your fingers. So if it feels a little like too grainy or chunky, add some liquid, either breast milk, infant formula, or water to achieve that desired consistency. And again, avoiding adding any salt, sugar products, so that includes brown sugar, maple syrup, agave nectar. Honey specifically, our recommendation is no honey for kiddos below the age of 1 because of the risk of botulism. We also want to avoid any artificial sweeteners or unpasteurized products such as milk or fruit juice when we're making baby food. And again, like you can either choose to puree foods or soft foods can also just be cut up into small pieces or thin slices. If you're interested in more like whole or larger pieces of food, not necessarily pureed to give to your baby, I would encourage you to look into something called baby-led weaning. It's basically just giving babies pieces of food instead of purees early on. There's been some studies that shows that it helps with those oral skills a lot quicker than feeding purees. There are some resources at the end of this presentation that will take you to baby-led weaning if you're interested in that. Okay, so we're going to talk about some very specific foods for the next couple of slides. So beans, like we saw earlier, there's quite a few nutrients that are found in beans. They're a good source of protein and carbs and have some of those other vitamins and minerals. So if you're using canned beans, look for low sodium or no added salt beans and rinse well. I also recommend this to adults just because canned beans can provide you with a lot of sodium. And you can also get that sodium from other foods. So it helps to save some of that sodium for later. For canned beans, you don't necessarily need to cook them. You can just mash it or puree them as is. But if you're using dried beans, it's a little more intensive of a process. So soaking the beans for 8 hours or overnight and then draining and rinsing well to make sure that they're soft enough to actually cook. And then you want to make sure you add enough water to your beans when you're cooking them. So about 2 inches of water should be enough. Bring them to a gentle boil and then reduce to simmer. You want to cook them until they're tender. So this can take a couple of hours depending on what you're using. So using something like an Instant Pot or a pressure cooker can really cut down on that time if you have that equipment. And again, you can just mash or puree it using a fork or a food processor or blender. For eggs, we recommend typically either doing like a firm scramble or hard boiled. It's important to check temperature for meat products, just to make sure that they are cooked all the way through and you're not accidentally giving a baby something that is not cooked properly, because there is that risk for feeding bacteria that can cause foodborne illnesses, and infants and small children are at greater risk for complications from those. So for eggs, you want the temperature to be at least 160 degrees. Again, using a food thermometer. You can buy a food thermometer at the grocery store or online. They're pretty cheap. And then once you confirm that it is at an appropriate temperature, you want to puree or mash it with a fork, food processor, blender. Typically with eggs, you do need to add some extra liquid. So just start with a little bit at a time, blend it up and see what that texture is like. For meat, poultry, and fish, so I included a link here from the USDA. So this is a website that has all of these different meat products and animal products and what is a safe minimum internal temperature to cook them to. So I would highly encourage you to check that out. But for meat, poultry, fish, really like cutting it into small pieces once you cook it. And then again, you can puree, mash it with a fork, food processor, blender, or you could even just cut it into small pieces and let the kiddo just chew on it as well. And typically with these animal products, again, we see the need to add extra liquid. So starting with 1-2 tablespoons, again, of either infant formula, breast milk, or water, and go from there and see once you get that pureed texture. For grains, so you can cook grains based on the package instruction and then add extra liquid until you get the desired consistency. Or you can, when you cook them, you can add extra liquid, so like extra water, to help break down the grains into a porridge. So you'll see this with like congee, which is a rice porridge. There's a lot more water added to it so that during the cooking process, the grain actually breaks down and it turns a lot softer, and you could just feed the baby that directly. And again, like depending on what grains you're using, for example, if you cook rice really well, you might be able to mash it well with a fork, but like things like quinoa or even barley, you might need a blender or a food processor just to get that consistency down. So what about food options on the go, or if you do want to buy commercial products? So we recommend things like unsweetened apple cups or ripe bananas. Like you can bring a fork and a bowl for mashing. Just when you're on the go. Yogurt, make sure to pack it in a cooler so that it stays at an appropriate temperature. Iron fortified infant formula, so like your cereals and grains and things like that. You can bring a spoon and some liquid to mix it in, and feed that, or even commercial baby food. Erica and I were talking before the class about how there's a lot more options now. A lot more brands, and some of them are not just like shelf stable jars. Like you can find different pouches that are actually in the fridge and they have like really good ingredients and really good formulas. So I would encourage you to go to your local grocery store and see what they have, just in terms of like what you could do if it's a really busy day, don't have time to cook, what you could offer your baby instead. So what about storing? So once you make the baby food, there's 2 ways that you can store it. You could do the ice cube tray method, so where you just put it into an ice cube tray, cover it with plastic wrap, freeze it, and then you can transfer it to a different container, just the cubes. Make sure to always label and date the containers. This next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about how long you can keep things in the freezer. So having that date on the container is going to be really helpful. Or the cookie sheet method, so where you add 1 to 2 tablespoons of food onto a cookie sheet, leaving spaces in between, so similar to how you would when you're making cookies. You cover it with plastic wrap and then freeze it, and it should be like coin-sized amounts of baby food that you can just transfer to a bag or a container, and again, label and date to have those on hand. So in terms of storing your baby food, so for solids, either that are freshly made or you opened from like a commercial product, for strained fruits and veggies, they'll keep about 2 to 3 days in the refrigerator and about 6 to 8 months in the freezer. For strained meats and eggs, so after you puree it, make sure to strain it out. About 1 day in the refrigerator, 1 to 2 months in the freezer. For meat veggie combinations, about 1 to 2 days in the fridge and 1 to 2 months in the freezer. And then beans and grains will keep for about 2 days in the refrigerator and then 1 to 2 months in the freezer. What about reheating? So You can reheat it on the stove in a small saucepan. Again, making sure you're stirring often, and checking the temperature. So for reheating, we want about 165 degrees for it to be safely reheated. You could do the same thing in a microwave. Just put it in a microwave safe dish. Again, making sure you're stirring every 15 seconds. Take the temperature and then microwave additionally if needed. So when you're reheating, you always want to test the temperature of the food before feeding it to your baby, just to make sure that it's not piping hot, so they don't burn themselves. And then here I listed a couple of different sites where you can find homemade baby food recipes. So again, it can be as simple as you have this ingredient, you cook it, you puree it, you give it to your baby. But these are really good options if you want more ideas or want combinations of different foods that actually taste good, right? So some of these you'll see the baby dietitian. So a lot of these are actually blogs or websites that are run by dietitians. And some of these, like the Illinois Extension, is a university website as well. And with all of these websites too, you'll also find some more information about just feeding your baby, what to feed, similar to what we talked about early in the presentation. Just to make sure that you are giving your baby a well-rounded diet, so that they are getting a lot of their nutrients from food. Yeah. So thank you so much for watching. Again, thank you to Stilly Valley Health Connections for sponsoring and hosting this event. And then I also have some references. So you'll see some of these, how to do baby-led weaning is what I was talking about earlier. They have a lot of information on purees, but also, again, just starting straight up with solids, which we know now is perfectly fine as long as you cut it into appropriate sizes. And a lot of these websites will also give you, like, for this food, this is how big this item should be so that it is safe for your baby to eat. So now, let's see if there's any questions. I'm just going to pull up the chat.
I didn't.
Oh, Carolyn.
I think you had an awful lot of information that would be hard to
Yeah.
answer questions with.
Yeah, so we can hang out and see if there's any questions that anybody has or comments.
Yeah. And I was just going to mention too, that as people are exiting, we are going to have a 6-question survey. And we just hope to hear from you, to hear your feedback on the presentation today, and then thoughts of future classes that we could offer here at Stilly Valley Health Connections. And just so you know, those who have signed up are going to receive a copy of the presentations. That way you'll have that to reference with those items. And then if you're watching this and hadn't received that, you can always contact us at info@stillyvalleyhealth.org, and we'd be happy to send them your way. All right. Well, it looks like people are exiting, so I think you must have answered everybody's questions that they could possibly think of. It was really informative. Thank you so much. I never thought about doing beans, not green beans, but like legumes and that sort of thing. So
Yeah. Well, thank you so much to everyone that joined.
All right.